Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Diego Ramirez been the face of Channel 7 News for 5 years now, his chiseled jawline and warm brown eyes a familiar sight to viewers across the city.
2 minutes to air, everyone!
The floor director's voice cut through the din, sending a fresh wave of urgency through the studio. Diego took a deep breath, centering himself as he always did before going live. He strode confidently towards the news desk, nodding at his co-anchor, Maria, who was already seated and reviewing her notes one last time. "Ready for another thrilling night of hard-hitting journalism?" Maria quipped, her eyes twinkling with mischief.
"You know it,"
Diego chuckled, settling into his chair.
"Though I doubt anything could top last week's exposé on the city's most scandalous potholes."
Their banter was cut short as the floor director began the countdown.
"We're live in 5, 4, 3...
The familiar jingle played, and the cameras switched on. Diego's face transformed, his easy smile replaced by the serious, authoritative demeanor that had made him one of the most trusted news anchors in the city.
"Good evening, and welcome to Channel 7 News at 6. I'm Diego Ramirez." "And I'm Maria Sanchez,"
his co-anchor chimed in.
"Our top story tonight."
The broadcast proceeded smoothly, with Diego and Maria trading off segments on local politics, a heartwarming community initiative, and the latest in a string of mysterious pet disappearances that had been plaguing the suburbs. As they neared the end of the hour, Diego prepared to sign off, already mentally shifting gears to his plans for the evening. But fate, it seemed, had other ideas. Just as Diego opened his mouth to deliver the closing lines, he caught sight of Javier, the production assistant, frantically waving his arms just off camera. Javier was mouthing something, pointing urgently at a clipboard in his hands. Diego faltered for a split second, his professional mask slipping ever so slightly.
"And that's all for tonight's... Wait, this just in."
He recovered smoothly, his eyes darting to the side as Javier scribbled something on a whiteboard.
"We have a special announcement regarding our upcoming Halloween broadcast."
Maria looked equally confused, but played along.
"That's right, Diego. It seems we have a last-minute addition to our programming."
Javier, still off camera, was now making exaggerated motions, clearly trying to convey something more. Diego squinted, trying to decipher the frantic gestures.
Yes,"
he continued, buying time.
"Our costume segment?"
He raised an eyebrow at Maria, who shrugged imperceptibly.
"Our costume segment will be featuring some surprise guests?"
Javier was now practically dancing, pointing at Diego and then at himself, making a swapping motion. Realization dawned on Diego's face.
"Oh, I see. It appears that I, your humble news anchor, will be participating in this special Halloween segment."
He managed a chuckle, though internally he was wondering what exactly he'd just signed up for.
"So, tune in tomorrow night for a Halloween treat you won't want to miss. This is Diego Ramirez. And Maria Sanchez."
His co-anchor jumped in.
"Wishing you a good night,"
they finished in unison. The on-air light blinked off, and Diego let out a long breath.
"What was that all about?"
he asked, turning to Javier, who was now approaching the news desk.
"Sorry about the last-minute change,"
Javier said, running a hand through his disheveled hair.
"The network execs just called. They want to spice up the Halloween broadcast, make it more relatable and fun."
He made air quotes around the words.
"And that involves me how, exactly?"
Diego asked, a sinking feeling in his stomach.
Javier grimaced. "They want the anchors to do a costume swap. You know,
to show your fun side." Maria burst out laughing. "Oh, this I've got to see. So, what am I wearing? Superman? Dracula?"
"Actually,"
Javier said, looking increasingly uncomfortable.
"You're off the hook, Maria. They want Diego to wear Camila's costume."
Camila was the perky weather girl, known for her bubbly personality and penchant for colorful, often whimsical outfits. Diego's eyes widened.
"You can't be serious." "Afraid so, buddy,"
Javier said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Camila's off sick, and they think it'll be hilarious to have you fill in. You know, big tough news guy in a frilly costume." "But," Diego started to protest, but Javier was already backing away.
"Sorry, man. Executive orders. Be here early tomorrow for a fitting and rehearsal."
As Javier disappeared into the controlled chaos of the newsroom, Diego slumped in his chair, trying to process what had just happened. Maria, still chuckling, patted his arm.
"Look on the bright side. At least you'll be the prettiest news anchor in the city."
Diego groaned, burying his face in his hands. What had he gotten himself into? The next day dawned bright and crisp, a perfect autumn morning. But as Diego trudged into the Channel 7 studios, he felt none of the season's cheer. He'd tossed and turned all night, his dreams filled with bizarre scenarios where he was chasing breaking news stories while tripping over high heels and battling with unruly wigs. "There's our star," Javier called out as Diego entered the makeup room. "Ready for your transformation?" Diego managed a weak smile. "As ready as I'll ever be, I suppose. So, what exactly am I wearing?" Javier grinned and gestured to a garment bag hanging on a nearby rack. "Feast your eyes on this year's hottest Halloween costume." With a flourish, he unzipped the bag, revealing a riot of pink tulle and glitter. Diego's heart sank as he recognized the outfit. A frilly, over-the-top fairy princess costume, complete with a tiara and a wand.
"You've got to be kidding me,"
Diego muttered.
"Nope, this is happening,"
Javier said, still grinning.
"Now, let's get you dolled up. We've got a wig, makeup, the works."
For the next hour, Diego sat in the makeup chair, feeling increasingly surreal as false eyelashes were applied. His cheeks were dusted with glitter, and a long, wavy wig was secured to his head. When he finally stood up, wobbling slightly in the sparkly pink heels, he hardly recognized himself in the mirror. The person staring back at him was, well, pretty. The makeup artist had worked wonders, softening his strong jawline and bringing out his eyes. The wig framed his face in cascading golden waves, and the dress, despite its frothiness, actually flattered his athletic build.
"Wow,"
Javier breathed.
"You look amazing."
Diego was about to retort when a strange feeling washed over him. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but something about the image in the mirror felt right. It was as if a puzzle piece he hadn't even known was missing had suddenly clicked into place. Shaking off the odd sensation, Diego cleared his throat.
"Let's just get this over with."
The set for the Halloween segment was decked out in full spooky splendor, with fake cobwebs, jack-o'-lanterns, and a fog machine creating an appropriately eerie atmosphere. Maria was already there, dressed as a vampire in a sleek black dress and dramatic cape. "Oh, my God." Maria's jaw dropped as Diego tottered onto the set. "Diego, you look incredible!" Diego felt his cheeks heat up beneath the layers of makeup. "Thanks, I think." As the crew made last-minute adjustments, Diego found himself oddly calm. The initial embarrassment was fading, replaced by a sense of Excitement? That couldn't be right. And yet, as he gripped his sparkly wand and practiced his fairy twirl, he couldn't deny the thrill that ran through him. "All right, people, we're live in 60 seconds. The floor director's voice cut through the hubbub. Diego took his place next to Maria, his heart pounding. This was it. He was about to go on live television dressed as a fairy princess. His career would never recover. And we're live in 5, 4, 3... The Halloween jingle played, and the cameras rolled. Maria launched into her introduction, her vampire fangs only slightly impeding her speech. Good evening, ghouls and boys! Welcome to Channel 7's spooktacular Halloween special. I'm Maria Sanchez, reporting to you live from the Haunted News Desk. But wait, what's this? It seems my co-anchor Diego has undergone quite the transformation. Diego, darling, why don't you twirl for the camera and show everyone your bewitching new look? This was it. The moment of truth. Diego took a deep breath, gripped his wand, and spun around, letting the tulle skirt flare out around him. Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, dear viewers. The words came out in a higher pitch than he'd intended, but to his surprise, they felt natural on his tongue. I'm not Diego tonight, but the fairy news mother, here to grant your wish for the latest breaking news. The studio crew broke into spontaneous applause and laughter. Diego felt a rush of something. Pride? Exhilaration? Whatever it was, it spurred him on. For the next hour, Diego, or rather the fairy news mother, delivered the news with a flourish and flair he'd never shown before. He sprinkled fairy dust, actually glitter, over the weather map, waved his wand to magically reveal sports scores, and even granted Maria's wish for eternal youth with a comically large tube of anti-aging cream. As the broadcast drew to a close, Diego realized he was actually disappointed it was ending. He'd never had so much fun on air before.
And that's all the news that's fit to enchant,
Diego said, waving his wand one last time. This is the fairy news mother. And Vampira von Newsington, Maria chimed in. Wishing you a spellbinding Halloween. They finished together. As soon as the on-air light blinked off, the studio erupted in cheers. Crew members rushed forward, congratulating Diego on his performance. That was amazing, Javier exclaimed, clapping Diego on the back. You're a natural.
Thanks,
Diego said, surprised to find he actually meant it.
It was fun.
As the adrenaline of the broadcast began to fade, however, Diego felt a creeping sense of unease. Why had he enjoyed that so much? Why did the thought of taking off the costume fill him with a vague sense of loss? Hey, superstar! Maria's voice broke through his reverie. Want to grab a drink? I figure we've earned it after that performance. Diego hesitated, looking down at his glittery costume. I should probably change first. Nonsense! Maria declared. It's Halloween! We'll fit right in. Come on, I know a great little bar just down the street. Before he could protest further, Maria had linked her arm through his and was steering him towards the exit. As they stepped out into the cool night air, Diego felt oddly exposed, yet strangely exhilarated. The bar Maria had chosen was indeed just a short walk away, a cozy hole-in-the-wall with warm lighting and a friendly atmosphere. As they entered, Diego braced himself for stares and whispers, but to his surprise, they were met with cheers and applause. It's the Channel 7 news team! Someone shouted. Love the costumes! Diego felt himself relax slightly as Maria led him to a small table in the corner. maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. As they settled in with their drinks, a glass of red wine for Vampira and a pink, glittery concoction for the fairy newsmother, Maria leaned in close. "So, Spill, what was that all about?" Diego took a sip of his drink, buying time. "What do you mean?" Maria rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. I've known you for years, Diego. I've never seen you like that before. You were glowing up there." Diego felt his cheeks heat up, and this time he couldn't blame it on the makeup. "I don't know," he admitted. "It was just fun, I guess. Liberating, in a way." Maria nodded thoughtfully. "You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Enjoying dressing up, I mean. Lots of people do." "Yeah, but..." Diego trailed off, not sure how to articulate the confusing jumble of thoughts and feelings swirling inside him. "But what?" Maria prompted gently. Diego took a deep breath. "It wasn't just the dressing up. It was everything. The way people looked at me, the way I felt. It was like I was finally being seen as who I really am." The words tumbled out before he could stop them, and as soon as they were out, he wanted to snatch them back. Maria's eyes widened, but her expression remained soft, understanding.
"Oh, honey,"
she said, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "Have you ever thought that maybe this is more than just enjoying a costume?" Diego felt a lump form in his throat. Had he thought about it? Of course he had. Late at night, in the privacy of his own thoughts, he'd wondered. But he'd always pushed those thoughts away, buried them deep where they couldn't disturb the carefully constructed image of Diego Ramirez, Star News anchor. I don't know," he finally managed. "I've never let myself really think about it before." Maria nodded, her eyes full of compassion. "Well, maybe it's time you did. You deserve to be happy, Diego, to be your true self, whatever that might be." As they continued to talk, the weight that had been sitting on Diego's chest for longer than he cared to admit began to lift. For the first time, he allowed himself to voice the questions he'd been too afraid to ask, even in the privacy of his own mind. What if the person he saw in the mirror tonight was closer to his true self than the Diego he presented to the world every day? What if the comfort and joy he felt in this costume wasn't just about playing a character, but about finally allowing a hidden part of himself to emerge? As the night wore on and their drinks were refilled, Diego found himself opening up more and more. He told Maria about the times he'd secretly tried on his sister's clothes as a teenager, about the inexplicable envy he felt sometimes when looking at women's fashion magazines, about the dreams he'd had where he was living life as a woman. "I always just thought I was, I don't know, weird?" Diego said, twirling his wand absently. "I mean, lots of people have strange thoughts sometimes, right? It doesn't necessarily mean anything." Maria listened patiently, her expression warm and free of judgment. "It might not," she agreed. "But it might also be your subconscious trying to tell you something important about yourself, something you've been afraid to hear." Diego nodded slowly, feeling simultaneously terrified and relieved to have these thoughts out in the open. "So, what do I do now?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. Maria squeezed his hand again.
"You take it one day at a time. Maybe talk to a therapist who specializes in gender identity issues. Explore these feelings in a safe, supportive environment. And know that no matter what, you have people who care about you
and want you to be happy." As they finally left the bar, the cool night air sobering after the warmth and intimacy of their conversation, Diego felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice. Behind him lay the familiar, comfortable life he'd always known. Ahead, well, that was the terrifying and exhilarating part. He had no idea what lay ahead, but as he caught his reflection in a store window, wig slightly askew, makeup smudged, but still unmistakably beautiful, he felt a spark of courage. Whatever journey lay ahead, he knew he couldn't ignore these feelings any longer. As he and Maria parted ways, she pulled him into a tight hug. "Remember," she whispered, "you're not alone in this. Whatever you decide, whatever you discover about yourself, I'm here for you." Diego nodded, too choked up to speak. As he watched Maria disappear around the corner, he took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. For the first time in a long time, maybe ever, he felt truly, completely himself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and self-discovery for Diego. He couldn't shake the feelings that had surfaced during the Halloween broadcast, nor did he want to. The memory of looking in the mirror and seeing a version of himself that felt so right, so authentic, haunted his thoughts. At Maria's suggestion, Diego made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in gender identity issues. Dr. Eliza Chen's office was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that seemed designed to put patients at ease. "So, Diego," Dr. Chen said, her voice gentle and encouraging, "why don't you tell me what brought you here today?" Diego took a deep breath, his hands twisting nervously in his lap. I'm not sure where to start," he admitted. Dr. Chen smiled. "Why don't we start with how you're feeling right now?" "Scared," Diego said immediately. "Confused, but also hopeful? Like maybe I'm finally starting to understand something about myself that I've been running from for a long time." Over the next hour, Diego poured out his story, the Halloween broadcast, the unexpected joy he'd felt in the costume, the long-buried memories and feelings that had suddenly resurfaced. Dr. Chen listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or offering gentle prompts. "What you're describing is not uncommon," Dr. Chen said, when Diego finally fell silent.
Many people who later come to identify as transgender or non-binary report having similar experiences, moments of clarity or rightness when presenting as a gender different from the one they were assigned at birth.
Diego nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "So, does that mean I'm transgender?" Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression serious but kind. "That's not something I can tell you, Diego. Only you can determine your gender identity. What I can do is help you explore these feelings and provide you with resources and support as you figure things out." As Diego left the office that day, he felt both overwhelmed and oddly lightened. The road ahead was still unclear, but for the first time, he felt like he had a map, or at least a compass. Over the next few weeks, Diego threw himself into research. He read countless articles and personal accounts from transgender individuals, joined online support groups, and had long, soul-searching conversations with Maria, who remained his steadfast ally. One evening, as he sat at his computer, scrolling through yet another forum, a particular post caught his eye. It was from a trans woman describing the first time she'd tried on a full outfit of women's clothing in private. "It was like finally being able to breathe after holding my breath for years," she wrote. "I looked in the mirror and saw myself, really saw myself for the first time. Diego's heart raced as he read those words. They resonated so deeply with his own experience that he felt tears pricking at his eyes. Before he could talk himself out of it, he found himself ordering a simple dress, a wig similar to the one he'd worn for the broadcast, and some basic makeup online. As he clicked confirm order, he felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. When the packages arrived a few days later, Diego's hands shook as he opened them. He laid everything out on his bed, staring at the items for a long moment before slowly, carefully beginning to dress. The fabric of the dress was soft against his skin, so different from the stiff suits he usually wore. He fumbled with the zipper for a moment before finally getting it up. The wig came next, and then, with painstaking care, he applied the makeup, following tutorial videos he'd watched obsessively over the past few days. Finally, heart pounding, he turned to look in the full-length mirror on his closet door. The person staring back at him took his breath away. It wasn't the polished, picture-perfect image from the Halloween broadcast. This was softer, more natural, but no less striking. For a moment, Diego couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stare at his reflection in wonder. And then, like a dam breaking, the tears came. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the rush of emotions. Relief, joy, fear, and above all, a profound sense of finally being whole. When the tears finally subsided, Diego stood up, wiping his eyes carefully to avoid smudging his makeup. He looked in the mirror again, really studying his reflection. The person looking back at him wasn't Diego, not really. But who was she? The name came to him suddenly, as if it had been waiting all along to be discovered.
Natalia.
No, she whispered, testing the sound of it.
I'm Natalia.
The next day, hands shaking slightly, Natalia called Dr. Chen's office to schedule another appointment. It was time to take the next step on this journey, whatever that might be. As the weeks turned into months, Natalia's journey of self-discovery continued. Each day brought new challenges, new revelations, and new joys as she slowly began to align her outer appearance with her inner truth. The decision to begin hormone replacement therapy, HRT, was not one Natalia took lightly. She spent countless hours discussing the potential risks and benefits with Dr. Chen and an endocrinologist, Dr. Patel, who specialized in transgender healthcare. It's important to understand that this is not a magic solution, Dr. Patel explained during one of their consultations. The changes will be gradual, and some effects are irreversible. Are you sure this is what you want? Natalia took a deep breath, thinking of all the moments that had led her to this point. The exhilaration of the Halloween broadcast, the tearful night in front of her mirror, the countless hours of soul-searching and research. Yes, she said firmly. I'm sure. The day she took her first dose of estrogen was both terrifying and anticlimactic. There were no immediate physical changes, of course, but Natalia felt a profound sense of rightness, as if she'd taken the first step on a long-awaited journey. As the hormones began to work their subtle magic over the following months, Natalia marveled at the changes in her body. Her skin softened, her facial features became slightly more rounded, and she noticed the beginnings of chest development. Each change, however small, felt like a victory, a step closer to aligning her physical self with her true identity. Of course, the journey wasn't without its challenges. Coming out to her family was one of the hardest things Natalia had ever done. She'd always been close to her parents and siblings, and the fear of rejection was almost paralyzing. When she finally gathered the courage to tell them, sitting in her childhood living room with hands clasped tightly in her lap, the reactions were mixed. Her mother cried, alternating between expressions of love and confusion. Her father sat in stunned silence for a long moment before asking, in a voice thick with emotion, "Are you sure this will make you happy?" Natalia's siblings were more immediately supportive. Her younger sister, Elena, hugged her tightly and whispered, "I always wanted a sister." Her brother, Miguel, looked bewildered but managed a shaky smile. "As long as you're still going to help me move next month," he joked, his attempt at levity breaking some of the tension in the room. It wasn't perfect, and Natalia knew it would take time for her family to fully understand and accept her transition. But it was a start, and the knowledge that they were willing to try meant everything to her. Work presented its own set of challenges. Natalia had built her career as Diego, the trusted male anchor of Channel 7 News. How would her transition affect her professional life? After much deliberation and consultation with HR and the station's legal team, Natalia decided to be open about her transition. She would continue to present as Diego on air for a while longer, while beginning to live as Natalia in her personal life. The day she came out to her colleagues was one of the most nerve-wracking of her life. Standing in front of the assembled news team, Natalia's voice shook slightly as she explained her situation. "I know this may come as a shock to many of you," she said, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. "But I hope you can understand that this is who I truly am, and that I'm still the same person you've worked with all these years, just finally being honest about who that person is." The reactions were varied. Some colleagues were immediately supportive, rushing forward with hugs and words of encouragement. Others looked uncomfortable or confused. A few, Natalia noted with a sinking heart, averted their eyes or quietly left the room. But it was Maria's reaction that meant the most. Her co-anchor and friend stepped forward, taking Natalia's hand in front of everyone. "I couldn't be prouder to call you my friend and colleague," Maria said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "And I can't wait to sit beside Natalia at the news desk." In that moment, surrounded by the support of her closest work friends, Natalia felt a surge of courage. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she had people in her corner. The process of transitioning on air was a delicate one, carefully planned with the station's management and PR team. They decided on a gradual approach, slowly incorporating more feminine elements into Diego's appearance over time. It started small, softening makeup, a slightly more feminine hairstyle. As the months passed and the effects of HRT became more noticeable, they moved to more androgynous clothing choices. Finally, after nearly a year of this gradual shift, came the night of Natalia's official on-air debut. The station had prepared a special segment to introduce Natalia to the viewers, explaining her journey and reaffirming their commitment to diversity and inclusion. As Natalia sat at the news desk, heart pounding beneath her carefully chosen blouse, she felt a moment of panic. What if the viewers rejected her? What if this was the end of her career? But as the cameras rolled and she began to speak, her fears melted away. This was where she belonged, doing the job she loved, finally as her true self. "Good evening," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I'm Natalia Ramirez, and this is Channel 7 News."
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!